I found out I'd been erased the same way you find out your ex is engaged, by accident and way too late to pretend you're surprised. It started with a Slack notification. Harold, yes, that Harold, our chairman and living fossil in Ferragamo loafers, tagged the entire leadership thread. Reminder, strategic presentation tomorrow. Exec sales, Charles, Martin, Jeff, that's it. No Claire. No mention of the woman who'd landed 3 of the last 5 multimillion-dollar contracts. The woman who, just last quarter, closed a defense robotics deal that the Pentagon leaked to Bloomberg. Nada. So I scroll back up the thread. Same pattern. 2 months of credits, updates, callouts, my name gone like a deleted spreadsheet cell. I'm sitting there in my glass office at 7:04 p.m., 3 takeout coffees cold on my desk, staring at my own reflection and wondering, when the hell did I become invisible in a company I helped build? My eyes flicked to the framed photo on the wall. Me and Harold, from 4 years ago, shaking hands at my VP promotion, he called me the closer. Now he couldn't even remember I existed unless it was to correct my font size. I should have seen it earlier. The shift was gradual, like a bad smell in the HVAC. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. Suddenly, it's all you can smell. First, they changed the seating chart without telling me. Then the board dinner ran out of seats. Last week, Harold looked directly through me in the elevator like I was a well-dressed ghost. But nothing prepared me for the memo. It showed up the next morning. Subject, sales alignment, updated policies from Harold Mayerson to executive leadership. I still remember the exact line. Women, while valuable in support functions, have historically underperformed in decisive sales roles. To protect margins, sales decision-making will remain a male-led process. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I reread it, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't even a whisper behind closed doors. He wrote it down. In writing, with periods, like it was a weather report. That memo was a declaration of war. And Harold didn't know I already had a bomb ticking quietly beneath his boardroom. See, I'd been working a deal off the books for 2 months. Something too weird, too unstable for traditional channels. A back-channel acquisition of Celsius Freight, an AI logistics firm bleeding out but holding a patent portfolio that could split the market wide open. I'd met their founder at a silent auction for tech philanthropists, spilled a gin tonic on my heels, and apologized by sending over a pitch deck. I opened it out of boredom, but by slide 6, I knew this company was a missile. If launched right, it'd blow every revenue target out of the water, and if mishandled, it would vanish under someone else's letterhead before Q4 even started. Problem was, Celsius was poisoned to Harold. Too risky, too unknown, too female-driven. Their CTO was a 32-year-old Korean woman who once called his product line geriatric trash at a panel. I never even told him I was chasing it. Why would I? He'd already decided my gender was a performance liability. So I did what women like me have always done in this industry. I worked in the shadows. I negotiated at night, pulled data behind VPNs, built a shell corp, and looped in legal under NDA so tight it might as well have been written in blood. And now I had one signature left. The deal was real, the ink was ready. But the revenge, that part hadn't even started yet. By noon, the memo had made its rounds quietly like a virus. No one said it aloud, but I saw it in their faces. The junior analysts avoided eye contact like I was contagious. Martin, kind of man who calls his assistant hun, gave me a pity nod in the hallway. And Jeff? He just shrugged and said, "Hey, policy's policy." I smiled. Policy's policy, huh, cute. At 3:17 p.m., I printed that memo. 1 copy, heavy stock paper. No margin of error. I slid it into a red folder labeled confidential, dropped it into my bag, and walked into conference room C like it was just another strategy session. Inside, 8 men in tailored suits, 2 overpriced consultants, and 1 presentation clicker passed around like a hot potato. Harold was halfway through a lecture on lean conquest, whatever that meant, when I took a seat. Didn't ask, just sat. He gave me a glance like I was interrupting a yacht club meeting. "Claire," he said, his voice clipped, "I wasn't aware you were invited." I smiled sweetly. I wasn't. Martin chuckled nervously. Jeff leaned forward like he was watching a courtroom drama. I waited for Harold to object, but he didn't. He just exhaled through his nose like a horse irritated by a fly. I didn't care. I opened my laptop and pulled up my slides anyway. The screen blinked once, then lit up with the title, Market Annihilation, the Celsius Freight Strategy. You could hear the air die in that room. "Celsius?" Harold said, blinking like I'd said Satan's toenail. "They're collapsing." At Martin, Didn't they just lay off 60% of their engineers? Exactly, I replied. That's why they're cheap. And then I began. Not politely, not slowly. I tore through the deck like a chainsaw through drywall, logistics gaps, predictive freight algorithms, last-mile dominance, and oh, look, a minor clause on page 17 of their patent filings that gives us exclusive licensing over autonomous delivery routes in 17 states. Someone actually gasped. Harold, he didn't say a word, just stared motionless, lips tight like a man watching his kingdom slip into the ocean. I closed with one slide, $120 million. Projected return 4x in 14 months. Silence. Then Jeff spoke. This is real, I nodded. They signed tonight. And that's when Harold snapped the pen in his hand. Literally. Ink splattered across the table like a crime scene. You don't have authorization, he said, low and sharp. Not cleared to make acquisitions. That memo, oh, I read the memo, I cut in. Several times. Then I reached into my bag, slid the red folder across the table like a poker player laying down a straight flush. You'll want to read this too, I said. Inside, my own memo. Signed by legal. Approved by the board. Dated 3 weeks ago. It granted me temporary acquisition authority under Clause 9b, the event of revenue jeopardy due to executive oversight or failure to act. Harold had signed it himself, blind signing a stack while barking orders at someone on speakerphone. I kept the call recording too. He went pale. But he stammered. I stood, closed my laptop, and smiled like a wolf wearing lipstick. I didn't need your permission, Harold, just your signature. Then I walked out. But the best part? That came later at 2:03 a.m. I signed the Celsius deal and realized he still hadn't seen where I was going to tape the damn thing. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was nervous. No, because adrenaline like that burns slow. It's not the kind that keeps you tossing in bed. It's the kind that makes you sit in your kitchen at 3 a.m. in a silk blouse stained with Triumph and espresso, watching the city flicker like a dying server farm and thinking, this is what it feels like to load the final bullet. At 1:58 a.m., the Celsius team and I stood in a half-lit WeWork lounge that smelled like burnt popcorn and desperation. Their founder, Evan, looked like he hadn't blinked in a week. Sweat pooled at his collar, but his hand didn't tremble when he passed me the pen. You're sure your people won't back out? He asked. My people don't even know we're married yet, I replied, signing clean and slow. The honeymoon starts now. At 2:03, the contract was official. The Celsius freight acquisition, valued at $120 million on paper, worth 5 times that in buried gold, was mine. Not Harold's, not Charles's, not the cigar-chewing rainmakers who hadn't closed anything larger than used Toyota in years. I tucked the final copy into the same red folder that had once carried his sexist memo and slipped into my car with the kind of giddy vengeance they don't teach in MBA programs. The leather seat groaned like it knew something unholy was coming. I pulled into our HQ parking lot at 2:27 a.m. Security waved me in. They were used to my late nights, though they never saw the reason for them. Not until now. Upstairs, the executive floor was dark except for the eerie blue hue of sensor lights. I walked the corridor in silence, past Martin's office with his whiskey cart and unread trade journals, past Jeff's little ego cave plastered in golf tournament plaques, and finally, to Harold's corner tomb, Pardon's suite. I opened his door. It clicked like a vault. His desk sat perfectly neat, as always. Everything in measured geometry. Mont Blanc aligned, papers squared, a single photo of his sailing yacht off Nantucket like it was proof of his masculinity. But what really caught my eye was that memo. His memo still taped on the inside of his glass cabinet. No women in sales decision-making positions. Comic Sans, all caps, centered. It felt like an altar, like I'd stumbled into a cult shrine to outdated thinking. I pulled the Celsius contract from my bag, peeled a piece of double-sided tape, and pressed it flat, right over his memo. I didn't center it. I let the title peek out from behind the signed signature page. Celsius Freight Acquisition signed 2:03 a.m. Then, because I'm petty and poetic, I scribbled in red ink beneath it, closed by Claire Halston, VP, Sales Strategy. P.S. Your memo's font sucks. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence drink it all in. It was surgical, clean, personal. And just as I turned to leave, I noticed something I hadn't before, the faint blue light of a webcam. Recording. Harold's new auto-logging system, stalled after the intern leak. It had been running the whole time. I smiled into the lens. Morning, Harold, I whispered. Hope your espresso tastes like regret. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the contract wasn't the only thing going live at 2:03 a.m. That blue light, it was connected to more than just security. It was streaming. to the entire exec network, including the board. That memo was about to go viral. Woke up to 43 missed calls, 2 board summons, and an inbox that looked like a war zone. Subject lines range from urgent, "Please call to Is This Real?" to the less subtle "Jesus Christ, Claire." The video had leaked, not just to the board, not just to Harold, but to everyone with access to the internal server. That auto-logging feature. Turns out Harold's vanity cam backed up directly to our Internet Archive for transparency and leadership modeling. Per his last quarterly speech, the footage of me taping the Celsius deal over his No Women memo, it had been auto-tagged leadership example, Halston. By 7:12 a.m., half the company had seen it. By 7:46, someone added subtitles. By 8:02, a junior rep from legal had dropped a GIF of my wink into the office meme thread with the caption, "When your boss says women can't close, but you just bought a damn company before sunrise." I didn't plan the leak, but God, I wasn't mad about it. By 8:30, I was in a boardroom with frosted glass, facing 12 suits who couldn't decide if they should clap or set me on fire. Harold sat at the end of the table, fingers tented, jaw locked, not speaking, not blinking, just simmering. The chairman, Mitra Sanyal, a woman Harold once called overpromoted HR, sat at the head. "So," she said, cool and clinical, "this Celsius acquisition closed." I said, sliding them hard copies. Signed, sealed, ROI projected at 400% minimum. Jeff, 2 seats down, actually whistled. But unauthorized, Harold snapped, voice jagged. She blindsided senior leadership. Operated in isolation. Conducted negotiations in breach of. I held up a finger. Not rude, just enough to stop him mid-sputter. Clause 9b, I said, temporary acquisition autonomy in the event of executive oversight or inaction. Signed by you. Ratified by legal. 3 weeks ago. Do you remember that stack of docs you approved while ranting about LinkedIn bots stealing your identity? Mitra raised an eyebrow. You have documentation? I nodded and slid it across. Stapled. Highlighted, timestamped. Beautiful, and the video. Asked one of the older board members, Dale, I think. Kind of guy who thinks inclusion means adding walnuts to brownies. Not my doing, I said. But I'm not apologizing either. That hung in the air. The silence stretched so long I could hear Harold grinding his molars. You humiliated the chairman, Dale added, almost scoldingly. I revealed a deal. If humiliation happened, that's on him. Harold slammed his palm on the table. She violated hierarchy. Undermined command structure. Hierarchy? I said, eyes locked on him. Removed me from strategy calls. You excluded me from exec briefings. You wrote a memo banning women from decision-making. You erased me. I didn't undermine the hierarchy, I proved it was broken. Mitra leaned back, folded her hands. Claire, she said slowly, do you have any idea what kind of firestorm you've started? I met her gaze without flinching. Yeah, I do. And it's about damn time someone lit the match. Then she smiled. Just a flicker. It was there. Harold, however, wasn't done, not by a mile. He had one last card to play. And I saw it coming barely when he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope marked, Confidential Personnel Review, Claire Halston. That's when I realized he hadn't come to bury the deal. He'd come to bury me. He slid that envelope across the table like it was a body bag, thick, heavy, yellowed just enough to scream assembled in malice. I didn't touch it. Just watched it sit there, oozing threat, while Harold leaned back like a man who thought he'd finally cornered the storm he'd underestimated. Let the record show, he said, slow and smug, this employee has a documented history of overstepping scope, disregarding protocol, and engaging in inappropriate workplace behavior. A few board members shifted uncomfortably, kind of shift that says I've seen this trick before, but I'm too cowardly to say it out loud. Dale cleared his throat. Mitra's eyes narrowed like a lens adjusting for clarity. Inappropriate behavior, she asked. You're alleging misconduct. I'm stating facts, Harold said, tapping the folder. Late-night meetings with vendors, off-record communications, unsecured data transfers. Claire has built an empire on loopholes and shadows. He was smiling now, not gloating, grinning like a man offering his own noose to the executioner, confident they'll hang someone else. And the internal footage, he added, her actions in my office at 2 a.m., that behavior bordered on insubordination. I nearly laughed. Nearly, but I kept my face still. Steele, Mitra turned to me. Claire, I didn't flinch, may I asked, gesturing to the envelope. Harold nodded like a king granting clemency. I opened it slowly, theatrically. Inside, a curated pile of screenshots, half-clipped email headers, vague statements from anonymous sources, and my personal favorite, a photo of me in a hoodie leaving a lift outside the Celsius office at midnight. Evidence, in other words, that I'd done my damn job. There's no misconduct here, I said. only mismanagement. I followed every clause of our policy. The off-record meetings, covered by Temp Acquisition Authority. The after-hours visits, legal signed off on them. These anonymous concerns. I held up the pages like garbage, written by the same men who haven't landed a deal since pre-COVID. Harold leaned forward, that false calm starting to crack. You went rogue, Claire. You made this personal. And I did something I hadn't done in 10 years of boardrooms. I laughed. You made it personal the day you declared war on half the workforce with that joke of a memo. The day you told the press we were leaner, smarter, and more focused, systematically cutting out every woman above mid-level management. I didn't go rogue. I went effective. Sorry that hurts your brand. Mitra raised her hand, silencing the table. Let's be clear, she said. Claire, your acquisition will be independently reviewed. But based on preliminary figures, it is not only legally sound, it's likely to be the most profitable initiative we've seen in 2 years. She turned to Harold. And your memo, Chairman, is being referred to HR compliance and ethics. The oxygen left his face. I'll remind you, Mitra continued, that discriminatory directives violate both company charter and state law. Harold stammered. It was internal culture. A suggestion, not a policy. But it was too late. Everyone had seen it. The memo, the video, the ink on the deal. The room was no longer his. That's when my phone buzzed. One message. Evan at Celsius. Just sent you the surprise we discussed. Should be in your inbox. Use it wisely. I opened the attachment, paused, and smiled, because Harold didn't know that while he was trying to crucify me with old memos and paranoia, his little empire had another crack forming, one I was about to shove a crowbar into. The file was titled Project Pomegranate Internal Use Only. Real subtle, Evan. I tapped it open under the table, and hand steady on my lap, heart pacing like a war drum in a thunderstorm. What loaded wasn't a spreadsheet or some NDA-trapped revenue projection. It was a recording. A screen capture, dated 2 months ago. In the video, Harold, mid-Zoom call, whiskey in one hand, eyes bleary and mouth too loose. He's talking to a man I recognized instantly, Alan Kerr, COO of Archon Systems, one of our top competitors on the Celsius deal. And let me tell you, words tumbling out of Harold's mouth weren't just damning. They were nuclear. Let Claire waste her time, Harold slurred. If she lands Celsius, I'll tank it in committee. We stall 2 weeks, they'll bleed out. You sweep in, offer 30% less. Everyone wins. Just make sure she doesn't know until it's too late. He toasted the camera. Smiled. No woman in this company closes anything unless I say she does. The audio ended with Alan saying, deal. A calendar reminder pinging. Follow-up resabotage strategy. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding so hard it was blurring my vision. I looked up, Harold still rambling to the board about corporate order and brand integrity, completely unaware that his coffin had just been nailed shut from the inside. I tapped the screen twice. Air played the video straight to the room's projector. No warning, no intro, just Harold's greasy voice filling the air. He froze. Boardroom went dead silent. I watched their eyes move, first to the screen, then to Harold, then back to me. The tension cracked like lightning. Mitra's face didn't change, but her fingers curled into fists in her lap. Dale, he turned sheet white. When the recording ended, Harold looked like he'd swallowed a live battery. I can explain, he croaked. No, Mitra said, standing. You can resign. But this was taken illegally, was provided by the company you attempted to sabotage. She cut him off. Claire didn't record this. Your intended victim did. I finally stood. Slowly, deliberately. Let the record show, I said, locking eyes with each of them. The chairman of this company conspired to undermine a legal acquisition, colluded with a competitor, and openly admitted gender-based discrimination on a recorded call. I turned to Harold. You didn't just erase me. You tried to bury me. I hope you packed a shovel, Harold. He stood up like a broken scarecrow, gathering his papers with trembling hands. No words, no apology, just the sound of a man realizing that his power was a sandcastle, and I'd brought the tide. Mitra motioned to 2 HR reps at the door. Escort Mr. Mayerson from the building. They stepped forward, stone-faced. Harold looked at me one last time, like he might beg. I raised one eyebrow and said, smile for security. Didn't, as the door shut behind him, the boardroom exhaled. Jeff muttered, Jesus. Dale took off his glasses like he was reevaluating every decision he'd made in the past decade. But I wasn't done. I turned back to Mitra. I'd like to request a full audit on all memos, hiring freezes, and board appointments from the past 18 months. Mitra nodded, granted, and I added I want his office. Now that got a chuckle from Jeff. Even Dale cracked a smile. Done, said Mitra, effective immediately. I walked out without another word, heels echoing down the hallway like war drums. But back in my own office, formerly Harold's, I found one more surprise waiting. An envelope. Handwritten, no return name. Inside, a black and white photo from 15 years ago, me, Harold, and a man I hadn't seen in over a decade shaking hands behind a podium with the caption, "Welcome, our youngest intern, Claire Halston." On the back, scrawled in Sharpie, "Told you you'd outrun all of us. M." It was my old mentor, Harold's predecessor, and his final lesson, leave the kingdom in better hands. By noon, they'd already changed the nameplate on the door. Claire Halston, SVP Strategic Operations, but unofficially. I was the woman who'd brought down a chairman at 2 a.m. with a contract, a red folder, and a smirk that echoed across an entire org chart. Char sent out a sterile leadership transition email, but the employees rewrote it in real time with memes, emojis, and gifs of Beyoncé kicking down doors. I didn't bask in it. I had work to do. While Harold was probably nursing his ego somewhere in a Scottsdale golf bunker, I was rebuilding the damn sales team from the studs up. First order of business: rescind every idiotic policy that stank of cigar smoke and gender panic. Second, promote the women Harold blacklisted, one by one. Rosa from Medical Tech offered her the biopharma vertical. Maya from APAC, I gave her full autonomy over cross-border AI logistics. And Jackie, who Harold once called too emotional for high-pressure closings, I made her my right hand. Because emotion isn't weakness, it's fuel. The men in suits never understood that. Meanwhile, Celsius Freight was humming like a jet engine. Press got wind of the acquisition faster than we could leak it. Headlines started pouring in. The woman who closed a $120M deal in the middle of the night. VP Halston outmaneuvers chairman in corporate chess match. Is this the new face of sales leadership? I didn't return interview requests. Not yet. Let them speculate. Let them wonder if I was lucky, ruthless, or lightning in a bottle. I was all three, but beneath the victory buzz, something dark still flickered. A shadow in the corner of the win. A question I hadn't fully voiced: why Celsius? I knew why I pursued the acquisition, knew the patents, the value, the opportunity, but I hadn't asked why they were so quick to accept, why their founder had sent me the Project Pomegranate file before the deal even closed. And that's when I saw it, hidden in an internal report, buried under logistics and projections. Single line item flagged, archived board correspondence, internal flagged by compliance, Feb 2021. I opened the archive, searched my name, found nothing. Searched Harold's, 3 results. One was a routine compliance form. The second was a post-board meeting summary. But the third was a forwarded email chain from 2 years ago. Sent from Harold to Evan, the Celsius founder. Subject: mutual understanding. Long-term value alignment. Let's agree that if she ever gets too close, we stall. You make her think she's winning. Then we'll circle back. This isn't about Claire Halston. It's about keeping the right people in charge. Attached was a contact sheet. My name, my bio, even my salary history. I stared at the screen, fists clenched, pulse a silent drumbeat in my ears. The Celsius deal hadn't just been sabotage. It had been a long-game trap. Evan had flipped the script last minute. Why? Before I could spiral further, my assistant buzzed. "Claire, there's someone in reception says he's from Celsius. He wouldn't give a name. Just handed this note. I unfolded it. You were never supposed to close the deal. But you did. Let's talk tonight. Discretion preferred. Rooftop, 10 p.m., no signature, no contact. Just that same subtle code word again at the bottom, pomegranate. And just like that, Venge saga I thought had ended, cracked wide open again. The rooftop was dark, lit only by the red glow of the city's insomnia. Exit signs, brake lights, the flicker of broken neon promising sushi no one believed in. I stood there in a wool coat and heels, arms crossed, staring at the edge like it owed me answers. At exactly 10 o'clock p.m., the door creaked open behind me. No footsteps. Just the quiet exhale of someone who'd expected to be first. Early, I said, not turning. "You're predictable," said the voice. Male, calm, familiar in a way that tickled memory. When I did turn, Evan, the founder of Celsius, was already stepping into the light. But something was off. He wasn't in his usual battered startup hoodie and frantic CEO energy. He was composed, buttoned up, wearing a tailored coat and an expression I hadn't seen before. "Thought we were celebrating," I said flat. "Or is this where I find out the champagne was poisoned?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Just wait. You weren't supposed to win," he said. "Not like this." "No kidding," I replied. "I saw the email. Harold sent you my full dossier. So which was it, bribe or leverage?" He looked away for a moment, then back. "It started as leverage. You were a variable, a sharp one. Dangerous. Harold thought he could feed you just enough rope to hang yourself. Agreed to stall you. But then I waited. Then I watched you dismantle his entire strategy without even knowing you were playing his game, he said. And I realized, if you were that dangerous to him, you might be exactly the chaos this industry needs. I stepped forward. So this meeting, what, some twisted job offer? You want to draft me into the next round of corporate espionage? Evan reached into his coat, pulled out a flash drive, held it up. This, he said, what Harold was really after. Celsius was a distraction. The patents, the AI, real but secondary, he wanted this. I took the drive, cold in my hand. What is it? Evan looked out over the city. Proof of a shell company network, offshore transfers, board payouts, women systematically blocked from leadership roles through a rigged scoring algorithm masked as performance analytics. He'd been building it for years, through consulting firms, bonuses, back-channel metrics. My throat dried, and you kept this. Why? Because you weren't the only one Harold underestimated. For the first time, I saw it in his eyes. Not guilt, not regret, strategy, revenge. He ruined good people, Evan said. Silenced half a generation of leadership talent. You made him bleed, now make it permanent. I slipped the drive into my pocket. And if I don't, he smiled again. That same chill smile. You will. We stood there in silence, wind picking up like the rooftop was holding its breath. Then he left. I stayed. I stayed until the skyline blurred and the war in my chest turned quiet. The next morning, I walked into the office, called Mitra, and placed the drive on her desk. This, I said, is the second half of the story. By noon, Harold's resignation turned into a full-blown federal inquiry. By week's end, a dozen complicit board members stepped down for personal reasons. And me. I wasn't just the woman who closed the $120M deal. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. No memo could erase me now.